darkness, my old friend. If it's a Robert Eggers screenplay or film, it's going to have darkness in it. It's his trademark. Not only is it in the way the film is shot through his wonderful cinematographer, but also on the page. I mean, it is intentional. In fact, in Nosferatu, I believe it's 120 or 130 times he mentions shadow, darkness. That's the whole point, is we want to hide our monster. In fact, I have a whole video on hiding your monster about Robert Eggers. You should check it out. And here they do it 26 times in the screenplay, where they very specifically mention darkness, shadows, black. And it's much harder to do in this film because of the aspect ratio. There's not a lot of places to hide. And in fact, shooting in this type of film takes a ton of light. Like, to be able to see in black and white the detail that you see, you have to really blow up the space with light. So to do that, but also edit it in such a way where you have darkness, and there's a lot of darkness on the finished product here. It's a little tricky, but again, this is the signature Eggers, where we have darkness in the screenplay. I love it. I love to see it. I also want to point out how they create art on the page with words. And you're like, well, obviously that's what creative writing is, right? I mean specifically with the words themselves. They do it several times, several different ways. Here on 58, we get a glimpse of an entire page with nothing but what's. Have you ever seen this before in a screenplay? The entire page is just what's over and over again. And this does show up in the film to some extent, where they're just yelling what at each other, but it is really cool to see here in the screenplay. And on 62, they really make us feel the lightning. And the reason why I consider this art on the page is because of how the page is laid out. We have a description, then the lightning. Description, lightning. And so it is really like jolting as we read down the screenplay. They also speak to us, the readers, as an aside, in parentheses. This is not terribly uncommon in screenplays. It happens. But interesting thing here is how they do it. You can see on 68, Old begins diddling 10-penny bit and dancing a jig, and then it tells us a definition. It says diddling is a kind of maritime scat singing that mimics a fiddle. They've obviously found this in all their extensive research. Some people would have maybe written this as an aside, but they would have put the parentheses right after the diddling at the top of the paragraph. They pull it down here, and then it becomes more like a definition. We get it again in the screenplay, where it's more of just sort of like showing their voice. Here on page 14, it says he pushes the wheelbarrow down the rock, and then parentheses, needless to say, the wheel squeaks. So there's 100 ways to write that, but they chose to do it this way to sort of include us in the story. A little wink, wink, a little joke. Of course, the wheel squeaking. Everything's going wrong. Another great example of how they use the space on the page is when they describe laughing. There's a lot of laughter in the screenplay toward the final act, when they start drinking more and things start getting weird between them, or weirder. You can see on 81, 82, we've got this laughing. It takes us down the page till we get to the end of the block there, and it says hold. There's that signature Eggers hold, and then black. Also very important for Robert and Max Eggers. And if you want to take a look at cinematic writing, there's quite a bit in this screenplay. It's not consistent throughout, but there are some beautiful bursts in here where they're using the art of describing a scene without using camera angles and all that. Let's look at this one here on page 38. This is about the weather. When the weather turns, either because it just did or because young was cursed by old. These, again, you can decide. It makes sense either way. But it says, suddenly the wind gusts and the arrow starts to jiggle a bit. The wind picks up. The arrow spins around and around and around, and it settles, jiggling slightly in the wind. And then the arrow points hard east. So it's telling us that the wind changed. That takes up a lot of real estate on the page. Could have said that in half a line, but they're showing it to us cinematically, helping us have this movie in our head as a reader. I appreciate it.